me tell you a tale, stir a hornet's nest, well remembered in the East, most forgotten in the West. It was the 1830s, and the Industrial Revolution was turning Europe into a land of wage slaves and air pollution. The history books tell us it was the era of free trade, and the entire world hungered for the products Europe made. Merchants plied their wares across the 7 seas, and they brought back things like porcelain, silk, and tea. Soon all the tea in China could barely keep the West awake. Such a thirst for Chinese products as could barely be slaked. They liked to drink their tea in cups of Chinese porcelain, and those who could afford it loved the silk upon their skin. But what made the merchants and the monarchs scream and cry and shout? They seemed to have little to offer that China could live without. They didn't want their muskets and they didn't want their wool, which left the British coffers empty and the Chinese coffers full. And they called it a trade war. They call it a trade war, and I guess that could be so. They say it's not free trade if it's just a one-way flow, because apparently free trade is when the West comes out ahead. That's how it is in practice, though that's never what is said. The fact of history, they'd have a sweep under the rug. The one thing they could sell in China was an addictive drug. It had long been banned by Chinese law, but the British didn't care. They packed the opium up in crates and they shipped it there. And they called it a trade war. It all came to a head in 1838. When the soldiers of the emperor torched 20,000 crates. It took 3 days to burn it, and when the fires had gone out, the Chinese people would soon learn what free trade was all about. Navies came from Britain, France, and the USA. In blood, land, and silver they would make the Chinese pay. Cities leveled, thousands killed. The war was 3 years long. That's how they opened China. That's how they got Hong Kong. And they called it a trade war. And they called it a trade war. And they called it a trade war.
All right, sorry for the awkward start there, but I think we're rolling now, and I think everything is audible in this microphone, more or less. Is it? If people are in the chat room, maybe you could just let me know if it sounds okay. Maybe I need to work on that. But anyway, this is 2013 a musical review, and I didn't introduce that song, and so I'll introduce it now, which is basically to say that although it is a song not about 2013, but about the opium wars of the early 19th century. It is a song I wrote in 2013 in the spring as a direct response to the Western leaders talking about another trade war with China. The trade war that they were talking about was because of the terrible crime of the Chinese government subsidizing their solar panel industry. And moving on to a little later in the spring of 2013, Assata Shakur, Black Panther, Black Liberation Army activist who was wrongly accused of killing a cop on the New Jersey Turnpike in the early 1970s and was sent to prison and in 79 and escaped from prison in 84. And on the 40th anniversary of her supposedly shooting this cop in May 2nd, 1973, on the 40th anniversary last May 2nd, the FBI announced that she was the most wanted terrorist on the most wanted terrorist list of the FBI's, which used to be the most wanted fugitive list, but they changed it to terrorist after 9/11, and she has the great honor, I suppose, of being the first woman to be the #1 most wanted terrorist in the United States, and she has $2 million price on her head, but she's still living in relative freedom in Havana.
Special Agent Ford got on TV to put a price on someone's head. $2 million, bring her back alive or dead on the very anniversary of the killing of Osama in the endless war on terror, the next victim of Obama. Enemy number one of those who brought us COINTELPRO. It's the FBI's most wanted, a real live cop show. It's not enough to kill them or have them jailed old and gray. You have to double the bounty for the one that got away. But if Asada is a terrorist, what does that make you? She was born in Alabama in an apartheid state. Ended up north where she found another shade of hate. Terrorized by racism in the schools and in the street. Terrorized by policemen for giving children food to eat. Terrorized by agents sent to disrupt and kill on sight. Terrorized for daring to stand her ground and fight. They tried to frame her for whatever, take your pick. Finally they found something and they managed to make it stick. But if Asada is a terrorist, what does that make you? One racist cop was dead, Asada's hands were in the air. She didn't fire a shot. The all-white jury didn't care. They tortured her in prison, years alone in a basement cell. Her comrades liberated her, broke her out of solitary hell. For years they tried to find her, but in 1984 she made her way to Havana, found asylum on a Cuban shore, and they terrorized the Cuban people, tried to bring them to their knees. But despite the terror of the empire, the so-called terrorist is free. And if Asada is a terrorist, what does that make you? If Asada is a terrorist, what does that make you?
Aha. Now this, hopefully... Oh, geez. Why is the sound level so low? I don't know. But now, anyway, I'm talking into the microphone, which I wasn't actually doing before. I just realized. Yeah, it's a good thing I'm not a professional radio broadcaster. Either that or if I were, I would need to have an engineer, because I apparently am a shit engineer. But anyway... moving on to I don't know, and how much of a pause was there? I'm trying to not open any other software on my computer this time, in the hopes that it doesn't create these pauses and stuff like that until the time comes when I can get a computer with a faster hard drive. Speaking of which, if anybody wants to support the efforts of me doing these shows and singing at protests and et cetera, then feel free to go to davidrovix.com and click on the donate button or click on the subscribe button, especially the subscribe button, if you want to be a amazing, wonderful supporter and have my undying gratitude for the rest of my life or yours or whichever comes first. And so moving on, June 5th, The Guardian announced that they had received a trove of leaked NSA documents proving that the NSA had been flagrantly breaking U.S. and international laws, extensively spying on the entire world for years. And I wrote a song about it.
Secretive government had a secret operation, massacring villages, killing millions, secretly bombing an entire nation. They wiretapped a hotel room. They got caught and the government was deposed because of secret documents Daniel Ellsberg exposed. One government came down, and to prevent a repetition of this fact, the next government passed the Freedom of Information Act. Each administration since then hoped it would go away, and then they finally seized the chance on a September day. They passed the Patriot Act before a single congressman had read it, but don't ask the executive how they interpret it. because that itself is secret, never to be revealed, just like their secret prisons and all the torture sessions they concealed. Then they formed the PRISM program so they wouldn't even have to ask compliant corporations to assist them in the task of collecting information. Every email you ever wrote, every book you ever read, every call you ever made, everything you ever said. I looked into a prism. What did I see? A police state looking back at me. The secret government men lied to congressional committees. Secret information even a senator can't see. Secret bureaucrats working with secret corporations, enforcing secret laws, forming secret juries to serve a secret cause. I looked into a prism. What did I see? A police state looking back at me. One brave man came forward and then he fled town. And now the secret government men mean to hunt him down. Feinstein says he's a traitor. McConnell said so too. But I'd say if we have a future, it's because of the whistle that he blew. I looked into a prism. What did I see? A police state looking back at me. I looked into a prism. What did I see? A police state looking back at me.
And then 1 month later, on July 6th, where was it? On July 6th, a train consisting of 73 cars of highly explosive fracking gas from North Dakota derailed and exploded, killing 47 people in downtown Lac-Mégantic, Quebec. And I'm pronouncing the name of the town wrong, but I had the, well, I suppose you could call it a pleasure of singing the song in Montreal and Quebec for lots of people who actually know where that town is and had been there and such a couple of months ago. And incidentally, several songs from that concert are now up on the top of my random live stuff from YouTube on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/drovics. If anybody wants to check that out, it was a great show, if I don't say so myself, and well recorded and all that. Yeah, here's Oil Train.
There's an oil boom. The prairies are on fire, shale gas. All the fuel you might desire coming out so fast. No time to lay pipeline, Eurekaville. It's like the days of 49, except this time they're using massive rigs that poison everything more thoroughly. The deeper that it digs, trains a mile long. Loaded up in rail cars, send them west, send them east. Past cafes, schools, late night bars, there's an oil train coming through your town. There were dangers. They knew this from the start, but they were minimal. They said everyone must play their part and risk the destruction of their cities. Each time a train rolls by, hope it won't derail and detonate sky high. There's an accident each day somewhere, but we're not supposed to fear that it could happen here. Listen closely. Do you hear that whistle blow? Look out the window. Do you see the fire glow? There's an oil train coming through your town. It was after midnight on a Saturday night. A resident called in that a rail car was alight with that much gas. Sitting by the lake, it was no one's job to watch the car that maintained the brake on 73 massive tanks of fracking gas down the hill, gaining speed as they rolled past. Now at the Music Cafe that once was on Rue Frontenac, there are 50 customers and employees who won't be coming back. There's an oil train coming through your town. There's an oil train coming through your town.
And there's been a number of derailments since then in Canada and the United States, I believe. I haven't kept track of the exact number, but that was the deadliest one. And it's a bizarre coincidence, perhaps, maybe bizarre, maybe not, that on the same date as the derailment of that train in 2008, on the same date in Afghanistan, the exact same number, 47 people, were killed in a U.S. bombing of Afghanistan. And maybe that's not so bizarre, given that there's 365 days in the year and these things happen. But it is seemed notable when I was putting together this thing. When I was actually not this particular thing, but a new blog that I'm starting, revamped the history and song section at davidrovics.com. If you go to the bottom of davidrovics.com, the main page, you'll see this month in history and song, and that has been thoroughly rewritten as of the past week. And I'm also putting it up as a blog 1 month at a time, which you can find at musicalhistorian.blogspot.com. You'll find the blog version of this radio show and the first month, January, of the this month in history section for anybody interested in such things. And so moving on from July 6th to July 8th. On July 8th, the hunger strike of 20,000 California prisoners began.
Some people have a lot in common, such as the thousands and thousands of captive men held in windowless cells 23 hours a day in the SHUs of Pelican Bay. Some of the smartest people you'll never meet, each and every day a life on repeat. Indefinite detention is the weight they carry, never told when they get out of solitary. Decades alone unless they snitch, those are the rules, that's the pitch. Decades divided into different groups, a guaranteed life of repeated loops, of repeated loops. Decades divided on different teams with Latin, black, and Aryan themes. But those days are over, and it's been 5 weeks. Refusing food until the Reaper speaks. Now they're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore. Some of them are in there for reading the wrong news. Some of them are in there for having the wrong tattoos. In the outside world, they might not care. But there's no free speech in there. A life lived under arbitrary authority. No human contact, no dignity. It's no kind of life at all. So 20,000 prisoners answered the call and said, "We're not eating anymore. We're not eating anymore." They say California's a progressive state. Governor Brown, ain't he great? You got Silicon Valley and Hollywood stars, and 120,000 men behind bars. Hunger pangs stab like a knife, but sometimes so does life. Something's gotta change, maybe this is the start. If the people on the outside do our part. Because they're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore.
And incidentally, if you maybe have heard that song before, but you didn't hear the funky guitar little pieces and stuff, that is the version from my latest CD, If I Had a Hammer, which, of course, some of the songs from there are on SoundCloud in the form that you're hearing them now, and others aren't. But if you want to get the new CD, then feel free. If you can buy it at davidrovics.com, or if you become a subscriber, you'll get it in the mail, and then most of these songs, all of these songs from 2013, are on one of the 3 albums I put out in 2013, which you can stream or download. Stream for free or download mostly for free at Bandcamp. What is it? davidrovics.bandcamp.com, I think it is. Or maybe it's bandcamp.davidrovics.com, one or the other. You can see it all on the front page of davidrovics.com too. I seem to be advertising a lot this week. I'm feeling very American, I guess. So there's somebody, Mina there in Nebraska, says she's hearing half of what I'm saying, and I'm curious which half. But hopefully that sorts itself out. And hopefully the rest of you can hear more than half of what I'm saying, because otherwise it would be really boring, especially if it was like every other word or something. If you're not in the chat room, feel free to join the chat room, and you might learn something about Linux, because there's some wonderful geeks from England and Canada, I believe, talking about Linux. And apparently there's a chat room on Linux or IRC or something like that, and I don't know what any of that is, but I probably should, because Windows sucks, and that's very clear, except that I don't know what to do with anything else. And anyway, moving on through the musical review of 2013, a few days after the California hunger strike began on July 14th, a racist vigilante, George Zimmerman, was found not guilty for the murder of unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin.
A boy went to visit his father out of town, where he had moved to an upscale neighborhood. It rains a lot in Florida, and it was raining on that night, but everyone says exercise is good. He went out for a walk to the convenience store to go out and bring some candy back. But some people leave and they never come home, and that night was a one-way track. For the neighborhood watchman was driving in his car on a rainy night, looking for a young man who might have a part to play in his personal race war. And what if this trolling vigilante, sowing terror on a racist whim, what if when he found this teenage boy, he instead had found a man more like him? What if things were different? Where would he be What if Trayvon had stood his ground? When Zimmerman approached in an unmarked vehicle, when the high school student ran, what if instead he had stood there in the rain with his Skittles and his Arizona can? What if trying to avoid a conflict with this cracker who was evidently messed up in the head, Trayvon had said, "I feel like my life's in danger," and he had shot this vigilante dead? What if things were different? Where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground? Would this hooded youth be gingerly arrested, treated for his wounds and then let free? Would he be hailed as a hero by the NRA, by Limbaugh, Beck, and Hannity? Would he be found not guilty by any jury in this country? Would he be allowed to keep his gun? Or would he be sitting in a prison cell watching pundits on the TV saying, "That kid really should have run"? What if things were different? Where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground?
And then a few days later, on July 17th, a new documentary was released about the 1996 shoot-down of TWA Flight 800 over Long Island Sound, which was very notable because I think 6 of the transportation department investigators who originally investigated the in-air explosion of TWA Flight 800 recanted their original views on the investigation and said that a new investigation should take place because they believed that the flight was shot down, which was obvious to anybody who was there watching, although the CIA tried to tell us all afterwards that we were all seeing optical illusions when 60 different witnesses saw what looked very much like a missile coming from the ground and going into the air and shooting down the plane. It is still not known who shot down the flight, although my guess is that it was the United States military and that it was an accident. But who knows?
Flight 801 left Italy, got to New York town, then expected to leave New York, go back to Italy again. It was a normal evening at first at TWA. The flight took off an hour late after a slight delay. And it was wheels up, there was excitement in the air. For some, it was the first time they'd ever been up there. This time Flight 800 barely lifted off the ground before it was shot down over Long Island Sound. Scores of people saw it, and they wondered why. A light had left the earth and arced into the sky. They saw it hit the aircraft, saw the craft burst into flame. People asked who fired the rocket. Others asked the same. what was to be another flight over the Atlantic Sea was a flight that wouldn't be. 'Cause this time Flight 800 barely lifted off the ground before it was shot down over Long Island Sound. Was it a Navy missile going where it wasn't supposed to go? Or a terrorist attack? We may never know. The CIA announced we understood the popular confusion. What appeared to be a missile was an optical illusion. And for some reason, which we cannot explain, there are 230 people dead. Dead they will remain. 'Cause this time Flight 800 barely lifted off the ground before it was shot down.
I keep on turning on the mic and then clearing my throat. I'm supposed to clear my throat and then turn on the mic, but, you know, it's minor details. They have a cough button. In radio stations, they have a cough button, so that when you're about to, well, some radio stations have it. Others don't seem to. Like, I don't know. But you press, if you're going to cough or something like that, you press the cough button, and then you cough or clear your throat, and then you depress the button, and, you know, very fancy. We don't have that here. So anyway, moving forward from July 17th, the release of that documentary, to July 23rd, mayoral candidate and former New York Congressman Anthony Weiner admits that a year after he resigned in disgrace from the House of Representatives in 2011, he continued sending pictures of his genitalia to random young women. And Anthony Weiner wins the prize. I mean, I think it's stiff competition between him and Rob Ford and various other politicians for the most ridiculous politician of 2013. But I believe, in my book anyway, Anthony Weiner wins the prize.
Anthony Weiner takes pictures of his wiener and sends them off to lots of women that he's never met. Normally, I wouldn't care about some guy's pubic hair, except in this case it's a politician we can hopefully soon forget. He wants to make New Yorkers proud and show he's very well endowed to be the mayor of the city from which he sends his tweets. He's a good Democrat. He'll go up to bat for the people of New York and the random women that he greets. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. I probably wouldn't give a shit about his adolescent wit, whether he was sexting after he resigned from Congress or before. I may not like his style as he issues his denial, but what really bugs me is he voted for the war. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. Now that it's the second scandal, maybe we can pull the handle and send Anthony and his wiener down some flushing drain and await the politician next, who will send a penile text, one vile politician down, but far too many still remain. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page.
And then a couple weeks later, on August 13th, I was denied entry to New Zealand. I got a phone call at Narita Airport in outside of Tokyo from an agent with Immigration New Zealand. And, of course, my visa was not in order, and that is my fault. But But still, you don't need a tourist visa to go to New Zealand, and I don't know what they were doing reading my blog, because that's not normal. And everybody else said so too, including all the New Zealand immigration lawyers and others I talked to. They don't normally read your blog and prevent you from boarding a flight if you have a U.S. passport. Nobody had ever heard of that happening before, and I feel very special.
I should be gigging in New Zealand now, but I'm not. I'm stuck at Narita instead. I should be singing in Dunedin, smoking kiwi pot and chilling with the Kiwi Reds. But when I showed up at the airport to board my flight, I was handed somebody's cell phone. Suddenly the future didn't look so bright, and I entered the twilight zone. The woman on the line said, "Hello, I'm from immigration. You may have a ticket, but you can't go to our great island nation." I felt like I'd been hit in the face with a big old kiwi log. But then I felt the Stassi's cold embrace when she said, "I've been reading your blog. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too." Well, I normally don't get many views, a few hundred friends and kooks, so it comes as surprising news that some of them are Kiwi spooks. I try to get my missives out and cause some small commotion. Someone's listening now, there's no doubt, across the South Pacific Ocean. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too. "Were you strip searched in Trondheim?" she asked. "What kinds of things do you smoke? Have you ever been charged with a crime? Are you rich or are you broke? Have you ever been turned away from any borders you tried to cross? What kind of venues did you plan to play? Do you use dental floss?" I said, "It seems a bit unusual for you to do things quite this way." I asked her, "Is this normal?" But she wouldn't say, she'd just repeat her message. "At Narita you shall remain. I've read your blog, each vile passage, and you may not board that plane. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too. They're watching this video too."
And then, of course, a week after that, on August 21st, someone in Syria launched a chemical attack, killing hundreds of civilians. No one knows who did it, but the U.S. and French governments were quick to blame the Syrian government rather than Al-Qaeda. The logic is, somebody still needs to explain that, but here's what I have to say about it.
There's an uncivil war in Syria, 100,000 dead, millions of refugees without a roof over their heads, proxy armies flowing into a country open wide. You got Al-Qaeda and America fighting side by side. You got Saudi monarchs and French socialists on one team. You got Russia and Iran backing the regime. You got the Arab League having another meaningless debate, saying let's just see what happens if we wait. But now the West says gloves are off. It's all become too real. Now Hollande and Obama are dictating the deal. Now red lines have been crossed. Now it's time to act. Now it's time to have a few million tons of impact. Now it's time to do the thing the West does best. Time to step in the hornet's nest. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime. So we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. What we know is this: there was a chemical attack, kinda like the ones that happened in Iraq, like the white phosphorus we used on the people of Fallujah, or the chemicals we sold to Saddam for Halabja. But this time it's a different story, this poison gas in Ghouta. Our allies would never do this, those foreign fighters in Al-Qaeda. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. We We don't know who did it, but we know who is to blame. The Baathists are the party, Bashar Assad is the name. We don't know who did it, we can figure that out later. Meanwhile, we'll turn Damascus into a smart bomb crater. We'll fix them with cruise missiles like in Baghdad and Mosul, where they now have peace, prosperity, and democratic rule. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time.
And I just read on BBC this morning that I consider myself somewhat politically astute, but if somebody could please explain to me why Saudi Arabia is providing the government of Lebanon with $3 billion to spend on their military, while the government of Lebanon is dominated by Hezbollah, which supports the government of Syria. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is also spending billions and billions to support the Al-Qaeda resistance in Syria. That is confusing to me, and maybe I'm sure there's somebody who can explain that whole thing, but I'm lost. Anyway, a few days after, the next day, in fact, after the chemical attack in Syria, there was a verdict came down in the trial of Graham Dunstan in Queensland, Australia, for damaging a U.S. helicopter gunship during joint Australian-U.S. war games in Queensland, and Graham was found guilty. And before he was found guilty, while the trial was ongoing, I wrote this song.
I watched it on the TV. Machine guns fired towards the ground. I watched the people run. Helicopter gunship strafing the street. I watched them lining up the bodies in the Baghdad heat. They say these leaks had consequences, and I must agree. When I saw them fire on the children, it affected me. I thought, what if I were wearing the other shoe? If I had a hammer, what would I do? I am just a person, like anyone. I am just another mother's son. I have no special powers. I cannot fly, not like that helicopter gunship up in the sky, sending all those bullets all around to the journalists and children on the ground. I am just one man, that's very true. But if I had a hammer, what would I do? Sometimes I try to wonder, why should I care? But then the answer seems so obvious. There are people down there. And right here in Queensland, there's an army base. And there's a helicopter gunship just sitting in place. There's a time for watching. There's a time to act, It's just gonna kill more children if it remains intact. I am just one person, but you are too. And if you had a hammer, what would you do? If you had a hammer, what would you do?
That actually was, a slightly older version of the recording. That's the version of the song from Spies Are Reading My Blog, but the version of the song from the CD with that name, If I Had a Hammer, has some cool effects, including sounds from the collateral murder video from the massacre from the helicopter gunship in Iraq, which Graham Dunstan was reacting against when he took the sledgehammer onto the military base. Anyway, so a few days later, after the verdict and after the chemical attack in Syria, you had the strange prospect of President Obama giving a speech at the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Equality, there in Washington, D.C., speaking for like 50,000 people. And essentially, I think the whole thing can be was summed up very well by a German newspaper that had a picture of Barack Obama on the cover, and instead of the quote from Martin Luther King, "I have a dream," it just said, "I have a drone."
The president speaking, 50 years to the day. If the great man were here now, what would he say? With all the people in prison and all the kids in the street, with the Navy sending in the Fifth Fleet. The president speaking, and oh, how things change. Now it's Syria, not Vietnam, in the firing range. Every hour or so, I look at my phone to see if we've sent in the cruise missiles and drones. Has the bombing begun? Have we failed again to stop the war machine from killing more innocent children? The president speaking in the August sunshine. Turn on the TV, you won't find a sign that there's something ironic, that it should be now, that we're waiting to find out precisely how. The buildings will fall and the people will die. The fathers will hold their lifeless children and cry. How could they do this? Did they accomplish their task? So at the top of each hour I ask, has the bombing begun? Have we failed again to stop the war machine from killing more innocent children? See the refugees streaming, even more than last week. Kids too traumatized even to speak, hoping to find somewhere, maybe a tent, wondering where their hopes and dreams all went. There's a demo this evening as the missiles rain down. I and some others will head into the center of town. Bear witness again to unspeakable crime and ask the terrible question one more time. Has the bombing begun? Have we failed again to stop the war machine from killing more innocent children? Has the bombing begun? Have have we failed again to stop the war machine from killing more innocent children? Has the bombing begun?
And then there was, very soon thereafter, September 7th, you had the Australian elections. I was in Australia in the lead-up a couple of weeks or so before the elections and for a few days after. And and it was crazy listening to Australian broadcasting. I mean, you know, I'm from the United States, which is a country run by capitalist, bigot imperialists, and but Australia is stiff competition, you know, for the U.S. In terms of the capitalist bigots running the country, because you had them. The whole debate between the two parties was basically about whether the boats should be whether people seeking asylum should be held in detention indefinitely on mosquito-infested islands that are about to go underwater, or if they should be turned back and towed back to the war zones from which they came. And that person who won the competition there was the one who thought that they should be towed back. And this is a song dedicated to a man who belongs in prison in The Hague named Tony Abbott.
My father's mother's parents came here on a boat. They came from a land of kings and queens, but on the wrong side of the moat. My father's parents came here on one too. They didn't want to leave Austria, but it was the thing for Jews to do. I don't know your story, but I'll bet it's more or less the same. What kind of war or famine was on when your family came before their ship arrived? Did your folks come here to discover and explore, or were they refugees running from the war? Did they cross the freezing mountains to make it to the sea, all the while wishing that they never had to flee? Were they marched across the jungles with chains around their feet, nearly dying of exhaustion in the desert heat before their ship arrived? Did they make a life here, or were they kidnapped and detained, held for years in limbo as their optimism waned? Were they turned down for asylum and told they shouldn't lie, then sent off to be tortured, sent back home to die? Did they get to move here, create their lives anew? Or are they held on Christmas Island, asking what on earth they can do before their ship arrived? Before their ship arrived.
And a week after that, the Australian elections on September 16th, the massive Anglo-American corporation pulled out of the plan to build the world's biggest copper mine in Bristol Bay in Alaska, which is a very controversial project there that even a lot of Alaskan conservatives are opposing, perhaps because they don't want to risk losing the election once the first massive spill happens as a result of the mine. I don't know, maybe actually for other reasons, who knows. Maybe they actually care about Alaska. I guess it's conceivable. But the plans continue to build the world's biggest copper mine and gold mine on Bristol Bay in Alaska. The solution for dealing with the waste is to put it in massive reservoirs in perpetuity. That is the solution for the waste. Next to a river with the biggest salmon run in the world, and next to the sound there, the water, the ocean. In these conditions, they are trying to build the world's biggest copper mine. And I wish Greenpeace would go get themselves arrested there, and not just in Russia. I guess they're doing that in other countries too, but I think a simultaneous action at the Arctic oil rig and at the coal mine in Alaska at the same time would send a nice message and would help to not confuse people about the whole geopolitical questions of whenever you're Americans criticizing Russia. Anyway, here's a song I wrote about the massive mine project that Anglo-American just pulled out of.
They've been trying now for 30 years or more to build the world's biggest copper mine by the southwest Alaskan shore, to build the world's biggest copper mine in the world's last great wildlands, to store 1 billion gallons of poison, turn it into wastelands, 1 billion gallons of poison in massive reservoirs, and to keep it all there forevermore. The toxic sludge will never leak. They're saying it again. Oh, to hear such stupid words from the mouths of stupid men. We know what's gonna happen if the corporation gets its way, and they build the world's biggest copper mine on Bristol Bay. The world's biggest copper mine, or the world's biggest run of fish. You cannot have both, no matter how hard you might wish, no matter how hard you might pray, or how careful you might be. Massive sludge pits on a fault line will soon find its way into the sea. We know what's gonna happen if the corporation gets its way, and they build the world's biggest copper mine on Bristol Bay. The Pebble Company. It sounds almost benign, but there's not a shred of innocence about the Pebble mine, because among the pebbles in the ore are the tanks of cyanide, the toxic sludge pits a mile deep and miles wide. If we cannot stop them, if we don't manage to say no, we can say goodbye to the salmon and the salmon row. Goodbye to the mountains when they flatten them for ore. Goodbye to all the things we once loved Alaska for. We know what's gonna happen if the corporation gets its way, and they build the world's biggest copper mine on Bristol Bay. On Bristol Bay. Bristol Bay.
So this is a tangent, I suppose, but I don't know if anybody people often, any time you play an acoustic guitar, then people say you're a folk musician, which is fine. I like folk music, so whatever. But if there's anybody out there who is particularly into hip hop, listen to the bass line of that song that I just played and tell me if you hear any influence. Anyway, moving on. Government. Well, on October 1st, the U.S. federal government began what would become a 16-day shutdown due to Republican opposition to the Affordable Health Care Act, which, of course, led to lots of good humor all over the world, including lots of comedians wondering what is the problem that the Republicans have with antibiotics. But here's my rendition of my song, "A Government Shutdown," which is not on any of the most recent recordings. It just didn't manage to make it onto those. But this is, but it is on live at Copley Square, which is a new digital-only, subscriber-exclusive recording that you can get if you become a subscriber. If you go to davidrovics.com and click on audio video, you will find a link to a concert from 2004, which I found, which is a fantastic recording, really well recorded concert. Really interesting to me to listen to realize what a long time ago 2004 was. But you'll also find a link to download to read about live in Copley Square, which you will be able to download if you become a subscriber, or if you write me an email and ask nicely. Here's Government Shutdown from that show in Copley Square, Boston, my old hometown.
They're making us buy health care, and the Republicans can't stand it. They're not just asking to get their way, they demand it. If they can't change the bathwater, they'll throw the baby out the door. They just can't stand to see such subsidies going to the poor. So they've shut down the government with whatever message that might send. If you need a mortgage or a student loan, there's no money left to lend. All the babies who need Wicks so they can have some dinner are just gonna have to go without and get a little thinner. Heading out to Yellowstone, better make another plan. Go to some country that is functioning like Tajikistan. But if you're in Pakistan or Yemen, watch out for the drones. The budget for them was left entirely alone. Don't our taxes pay the gunships to do the things they do? Why don't we shut down the military too? If you want safety in the workplace or a tax rebate, if you were hoping someone might have checked out that food you just ate, waiting for VA benefits, you might just start digging your grave hole. The only fully funded branch is active duty on patrol. But don't our taxes pay the gunships to do the things they do? Why don't they shut down the military too? Hoping the CDC might warn us of an outbreak of disease, you might just lick your thumb and stick it in the breeze, because the biggest employer in the country has now laid off its workforce, except the ones responsible for dropping bombs, of course. But don't our taxes pay the gunships to do the things they do? Why don't they shut down the military, shut down the military, shut down the military too?
And on October 4th, the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society began a campaign to try to interfere with the annual dolphin hunt in Japan. And a couple months before that, a few weeks before that, I had the great pleasure of hanging out with a bunch of wonderful Sea Shepherd folks in Australia, folks from all over the world who are based in Australia, where from which point they head to Antarctica every year to try to stop the Japanese whaling fleet from doing what they do.
Time to leave now, from Hobart to Antarctica, so close but so far from Australia, where watchful eyes are always peeled, 'cause you never know when there's a growler below. Watchful eyes peeled for predators and prey, where all you can do is whatever you can to keep the hunt at bay. The time is coming, and it's coming soon, when we'll stand between you and that harpoon. Is unforgiving, The seafloor is a grave for those capsized before us, fell beneath the waves. Perhaps we'll join them by accident or not, a gale or a storm or a well-aimed shot. But we'll steer around the ice and right into their sights. Everyone must pick their battles. This is our fight. So here beneath the Southern Cross and the crescent moon, we'll stand between you and that harpoon. Between you and the harpoon, there's just a little space, but that's where we can see your face. Look into your eyes, hear you sing. One comes to realize you have to do something. Sometimes all you can do is do your best and hope that someone else will do the rest. So once again we'll spend this afternoon standing between you and that harpoon.
Well, Sergey and folks in the chat room are talking about the Trans-Canadian pipeline that's going all over Canada and all over the U.S. and leaking and blowing up and wreaking havoc on the environment and of course using up tremendous amounts of taxpayer dollars in both the U.S. and Canada to build this thing when we should be spending our taxes on sensible things like windmills and solar panels. And I did not have this song in my 2013 rundown because I kind of had it pegged on 2012, but it's just as relevant this year as it was last, and there's protests happening all over the U.S. and Canada and elsewhere against this pipeline to oblivion. So here is a song I wrote about that, which is on Everything Can Change album that I recorded last winter.
As soon as they started drilling for oil, they started building pipelines on the seabed through the forests and across the border lines. As soon as they started laying the pipe, they said, we'll do this safely. There will never be an accident. We can do this carefully. But the sands shift, the ice melts, disasters are routine. Point out their record of destruction, and they'll say their hands are clean. Point out their woeful deeds, and they'll consult their banker and say it's safer to use a pipeline than an oil tanker. So now they want to see how far their madness it can go. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. The tar sands line the north beneath Alberta's ground. As the price of oil rises, the oil men have found now there's profit to be made in a madman's dream by drilling deep beneath earth, blasting it with steam, bulldozing the land, melting what's inside, a record of extinction 1,000 miles wide. But laying waste to the northern plains is evidently not enough. The capitalists need markets where they can sell this toxic stuff. So across the farms and prairies, the oil now must flow. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. Governors oppose it, and every native band. Ranchers don't want it passing through their land. Union leaders have denounced it, as have the rank and file. The president delayed it for just a little while. They say you can't stop progress. I hope that isn't true, 'cause if we mine the tar sands, if we let the pipeline through, it will be a pipeline to oblivion, a pipeline to the end, a pipeline to a future with nothing round the bend, a pipeline to a future that I hope we'll never know. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. A pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico. Pipeline from the tar sands to the Gulf of Mexico.
That is, I guess, just every time I hear those songs from that album, I have to give a plug to the amazing musicians from Florida who made the album as cool as it is. I think June Bustamante and Alejandro Arenas. And June has a new album of her own out. Check it out. June, what is it? Well, you'll look her up in June Bustamante in Florida. You'll find her website. And that album, Everything Can Change, you can download for free on my site on Bandcamp. And so then, of course, 2013 was notable for quite a bit of protest against minimum wage, or to raise the minimum wage, especially in the fast food industry and in low-paid service industry like Walmart. And there were many workers in many different states around the country. I don't know the numbers altogether, but quite a few people participated in walkouts from Walmarts and fast food places, outlets around the U.S. And this is a song that I wrote about the hope that something like that would happen, which it hadn't really happened yet in the U.S. at that point. But I thought it would be a very good idea, and I wrote this song 14 years ago, and eventually, at least to some extent, it came true, and hopefully it'll come true to a much larger extent in the near future.
When I awoke one morning, there was a feeling in the air. Everything was quiet, things were different everywhere. The Wobblies were back again with Joe Hill at the mic, when all the minimum wage workers went on strike. There was no one flipping burgers, all the grills were cold. Onion rings were in their bags, fries were growing mold. There were no baristas at Starbucks asking how many shots would you like, when all the minimum wage workers went on strike. There was no one pumping gasoline, no one driving from town to town, no one at the register, all the highways were shut down. Cars were stuck in the garage, CEOs on bikes, when all the minimum wage workers went on strike. The fruit was falling off the trees, no one to load the trucks. Corn was rotting on the stalk, no farm hands to shuck. Workfare workers were hanging at home, spending the day with their tykes, when all the minimum wage workers went on strike. Yuppie parents were housebound, their nannies left the job. Walmart workers said enough of our labor has been robbed. The Foot Locker was locked up, the boss had to take a hike, when all the minimum wage workers went on strike. When I awoke one morning, there was a feeling in the air. Everything was quiet, things were different everywhere. The Wobblies were back again with T-Bone at the mic, when all the minimum wage workers went on strike. When all the minimum
That's featuring Eric Royer on banjo, and that is from the album Live at Club Passim, which you can download in its entirety for free at soundclick.com/David Rovix. And so I was going to I'm still going to do a couple more songs related to 2013, but there, in the chat room there is a wonderful discussion going on that is partly about the folks trying to stop the pipeline in the U.S. and Canada, the tar sands blockade movement, which recently just was involved with slowing down the progress of a massive shipment of equipment through Oregon that is heading towards the tar sands, I think this is a wonderful movement that needs to grow, and it's doing some fantastic stuff, and I applaud them and like to support them whenever and wherever possible, at least in the form of benefit concerts and stuff, which I've done in a number of places, including Oklahoma City recently, and this song goes out as a bit of friendly advice to the tar sands blockaders in Oklahoma City.
I don't drive a car because they run on gas, and if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike, or sometimes a skateboard, so fuck off all you drivers and your yummy hordes, sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on moldy chives, or the donuts that I found in last week's dumpster dives. You people in that restaurant, I think you are so sad when you could have been eating bagels like the ones that I just had. I think it is a shame all the bourgeois things you do. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't wear leather, and I like my clothes in black, and I made a real cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school. I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't have sex, and there will be no sequel, because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal. I'll just keep on moshing to Anti-Flag and Crass until there are no differences in gender, race, or class. All you brainwashed readers, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't believe in voting, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy. Whether or not it works, I know it is the case, and only direct action can save the human race. So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you. I am not a pacifist, I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I've taken a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose, because I feel so militant and everybody knows. By the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you.
Because they are better anarchists than me anyway, so it needs to be said. And you can get, if you're a better anarchist than someone else, then you can get the new T-shirt. I'm a better anarchist than you T-shirts on my online store, by the way. So that song is now an advertisement, which I think is even better. And so moving on to other events in 2013, on December 12th, several Icelandic bank bosses began serving prison sentences for their roles in the banking collapse of 2008. I just want to repeat that sentence because it is notable and wonderful. Several Icelandic bank bosses began serving prison sentences. Bankers in prison.
Iceland is an island with 500,000 or so Vikings, mostly known for volcanoes, hot springs, and fishing, known for its welfare state, for being good and socialistic. Certainly not known for being corrupt or nepotistic, but in the USA and Europe, when they were deregulating banks, Iceland's politicians took bribes and joined their ranks. Soon you had a situation one would think just couldn't be. A bank whose debt was worth 10 times the country's GDP. When Wall Street imploded, sure enough it spread. Banks all over the world were floating in the red. All over the world, governments made the plan to cut spending and raise taxes on the working woman and working man. The banks were bailed out while the people had to pay. But in Iceland people thought there must be a better way, and the earth stood still a moment. Fear was struck in every toff when Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers. When Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. Folks were in the streets in Reykjavik and just couldn't be ignored. They said this is a debt we Icelanders can't afford. Let's guarantee deposits of all our people, yes indeed. But as for all the speculators motivated by their greed to make really dumb investments, to them Iceland said good luck. Sorry for your losses, but we don't really give a fuck. The 1% all trembled when they took away the trough. When Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. The UK called them terrorists, said we cannot let this stand. Who do these peacenik blondes think they are in Iceland? They threatened isolation and economy in flames, but the Icelanders said sorry, but the banks can settle their own claims, though that might be harder for them now that they're under house arrest. Or else they fled the country as they were most unwelcome guests. And now Reykjavik's recovery just makes a fat cat sputter and cough, since Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. If you haven't heard of this example, perhaps there's a reason why the owners of the world don't want this kind of shit to fly. They say we all must pay up in this shakedown by the mob if we can't afford to pay the rent cause we don't have a job. They say it's not their problem if we're forever shackled by their debt. We must save the 1% from the fate they should have met. But there is an alternative, though it makes the fat cat scoff. That Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. When Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers to fuck off.
And on Christmas Eve a few days ago, surrounded by the apartheid wall, the Christians of Palestine celebrated the birth of Jesus there in Bethlehem.
Church bells are ringing. Families are wearing their Sunday best. Choirs are singing. Red sun is setting in the west. A soldier is yelling. Standing tall, checkpoint is closing. Outside a giant wall, it's Christmas Eve. In Bethlehem. Tourists are coming. Birthplace of Jesus, a call to port. Now they are leaving. They say you should keep it short. Shop floors are empty. There's no one there. Checkpoint is closing. To Manger Square, it's Christmas Eve. In Bethlehem. Those Christians who stay here dream of sprouting wings, but they stubbornly stay near their long lost kings, relatives stranded far away. They have been branded terrorists. That's what the colonists say. It's Christmas Eve. In Bethlehem. It's Christmas Eve. In Bethlehem. In Bethlehem. In Bethlehem. In Bethlehem.
So I'm drawing this show and this year of 2013 to a close, and thanks so much for everybody out there listening, and thanks so much to everybody in the chat room who kept me entertained and hopefully each other entertained during the show. And let's see, before I close with one more song, I pressed someone in the chat room said I pressed a function button on my keyboard. What did I do? What happened? I don't know what happened. Function. Really? Oh, geez. I don't know. Well, I definitely kept on pressing the number 5 by accident. That was making its way into everything I was saying in that last message, but I don't know. Everything seems to be functioning here, unless I pressed a really bad function button. So... yes, anyway, thanks to all of you, and I hope to see lots of you in 2014, certainly including most of the people in the chat room and many others. Hopefully I don't repeat this message too often on these shows, but anyway, I'm going to be in Ireland and New York City next month in January, so if you are somewhere in Dublin, Belfast, Cork, or New York City, then I hope to see you next month. And February, I'll be doing a tour of the West Coast from Portland down to Los Angeles and back, and a whole bunch of places in between. And then in March, there's the possibility of a visit to Mexico, but I'm not sure if that's happening. And April, I'll be in Great Britain for the entire month, or England, Scotland, and Wales, I should say, because apparently there's not a word to describe that landmass without getting you into trouble. But there needs to be, guys. You guys got to figure that out, you people over there. There needs to be a word to describe the landmass that we, formerly known as Great Britain, or because you can't just get everybody to say England, Scotland, and Wales all the time. I'm sorry, it's too long. People hate each other in places in various parts of North America, but we still just call it North America. I mean, I'm sure somebody hates that term too, but anyway. So I'll be in continental Europe, as some people in Britain say, in May, and British Isles, really? I mean, because that would include Ireland, and you'll definitely get into trouble for saying British Isles, because that includes Ireland. So you can't say that either. But because that's both islands. So if we need a word for the one that includes England, Scotland, and Wales, whether or not it includes the Isle of Man, who cares about that? But basically, the Isle of Wight, whatever. We got to have at least something for those three political geographic entities. I would say somebody needs to work on that. But it's, I think, pretty low on the level of importance of whether we have the right name for things. But apparently, I don't know. Apparently, it's important to some people. So just moving on here off of my tangent. Me and my daughter are heading out to the coast after this to hang out with a Palestinian from Bethlehem, in actuality, and who might be listening here. So, Saad, if you're listening, I'll see you in a couple hours, and I will leave you all with a song that is about how even everything may look kind of bleak in many ways, given that the capitalist, imperialist, bigoted swine are in power in much of the world. Everything can change with a good social movement overnight. Just remember 1848. And if you don't remember 1848, read something about it, because you need to know about 1848. Otherwise I'll just close before this song with one more commercial announcement, that if you want to support what I'm doing here, then feel free to make a donation or subscribe to me. All 253 subscribers are so deeply appreciated, and you are all basically allowing me to keep on doing this for a living, which would otherwise maybe not be possible. And so there you go, and thank you very much for listening. And here is a song to close with, and when this song is over, I'll hit the button that will unfortunately make the chat room disappear. So sorry about that. Spreaker should work on that, I think. But then again, maybe we don't need to remember everything. Who knows? 1, 2, 3, 4.
First you have to have a problem. That part isn't hard. The second step is everybody realizing they're like you. They're holding the same card. Step 3 is finding there's a tactic when everyone believes it could be true. That if all the people work collectively, there just might be something we can do, and everything can change. So quick. Congressmen and businessmen and TV sets will try hard to make sure it isn't so. You don't have a problem. If you do, it's not the same problem. And if it is, well, there's just nowhere you can go. But it's happened many times. The history is rich, though we easily forget how a meme can take hold and grab you, how it can spread out like a net, and everything can change. So quick. They'll say we are lost or we're dreaming, or they'll make a dream for us. They'll try to come up with a good story about why we belong at the back of the bus, about why we belong in this position, about how we don't know what we meant, about how there most certainly isn't any such thing as the 99%, but everything can change. So quick. Everything can change.